So today we are going to learn to create this little hinge. So essentially the idea of this is that we've measured out two parts and we've measured them out so that there are gaps in between all the areas, and we'll have sort of a moving part. So the first thing we need to do is create a new SketchUp project, and we're going to make sure that we choose millimeters. It's important to have a look at the model info here on the right hand side of the screen and just make sure we have a high precision. If the precision's too low, it's going to be difficult to move our components around and make sure we have those nice gaps. They'll start to sort of click into place. So we want to make sure that we have that precision set quite high. Now, using our arrow tool, we can remove placeholder character and we can start to build our piece. We're going to use our square or rectangle tool first, and we're going to change the size of this to be 30 by 20. You can see that that's gone incredibly small, so we can just zoom into that using our mouse. And I'm also just going to use my move tool here to make sure I move it back into our work area so that I can see my axes like this. So that's going to be the side of our, that's going to be the first side of our hinge. And using our push-pull tool, we can pull that 10 millimeters on the y-axis. All right, now we're going to use our tape measure tool to put in some markers here. So I'm just going to orbit this around using O on my keyboard, or the orbit tool at the bottom of the tool panel if you prefer. And then I'm going to grab my tape measure or press T on the keyboard, and I'm going to create some markers here. So the first one I'm going to bring out is 11 millimeters. Then going to bring this one in 4.5 millimeters. And repeat that on the other side. I'm going to bring one in here, 5 millimeters, and one up, 5 millimeters, so that I have all these markers in place. Now basically what I'm going to do is just draw out the first little area in here. So I can click this with my pencil tool, and that is going to become the section of our hinge that we cut away. So we can just use our push-pull tool to push it down until we get that on-face option. Then when I let go, it'll actually disappear. So orbiting this around so I can see the side of my hinge, I'm going to use my circle tool. I'm going to use this to draw a circle of 3.5. Now this is going to become the area that disappears, that our hinge sort of like locks into. But first I want to round out this edge. So I'm just going to use my offset tool. And just clicking on that edge, I'm going to drag it out 1.5, enter, which gives me this nice sort of round area. And using my push-pull tool, I can just push that till we get a notification on face or offset, and that will remove that edge so we have this nice clean curve. And I'm going to zoom into this middle section so I can see it, and using my push-pull tool, I'm going to push this area in again until we get that option on face, and that will make sure that that disappears. All right, so I'm going to repeat this process on the other side of my hinge now. So using my T for tape measure, I can bring a point out 5 millimeters and bring a midpoint of 5 millimeters. Draw my circle of 3.5. I'm then going to create my, where's my tool? Offset from the line 1.5. And then remove these edges and remove that internal area as well. Okay, so there's the first part of our hinge. So using my eraser tool, I'm just going to remove all of these construction lines because they're a bit messy, and our hinge on the other side is going to have slightly different measurements, so we don't want to be accidentally using the wrong measurements here. So we're going to remove all of that. I'm going to highlight the entire shape using my arrow tool, right click and choose Make Component. So I'm just going to give this a name, Hinge 1. So this is the first part of my hinge, and that's kind of going to tie that all together so that I can move it as one piece later if I want to, and it doesn't get confused with the second part of my hinge. So orbiting back around and zooming out a little, I'm going to start to create the second side of my hinge. So using my rectangle tool, I'm going to draw another box which is the same measurements. So 30 by 20. And we're going to also bring that one up 10 millimeters. And get our tape measure tool so that we can start to measure this one out a little bit. Alright, so we brought our sides in 4.5 millimeters on this one. So we want this to be slightly wider so that it'll fit inside the other piece. So we're going to put tape measure marks at 5 millimeters here. So starting at the side, we can drag this out 5 millimeters. Drag this one out 5 millimeters. Bring this one out 11. We can also bring this one up 5, and I'll bring this one across 5 so that we have our markers on the side ready to go as well. So this time what we're going to do is actually use our line tool. I'm just going to rotate this around so I can see it, to draw in the outside edges. So I'm going to draw that corner, and I'm going to draw in that corner, and using my push-pull tool I can just push that down and just push that one down until it disappears. Now sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to see whether it's actually worked, so it could be a good idea to actually just rotate around so you can see it, but that one has worked in this instance and that's disappeared. Okay, so coming around to our side point here, actually just going to get rid of these construction lines because they're not quite right. Since we've removed the edges, and we'll do new construction lines. This time I'm going to come down 5 and across 5, just so that they're on the actual face so we can make sure that they are accurate. And then I'm going to grab my circle tool and I'm going to bring that out 3 millimeters. So this was 3.5 and we want to make sure that there's a small gap in between this and this, so we'll bring it out 3.5. We also want to round the edges off here as well, so I'm just going to get my 2-point arc, and you can see when I click here it brings out a tangent to edge. I click to close that and click again to make the line, and that's going to give me a perfect copy of the circle in the center. So we click again here, bring it out slowly, tangent to edge, click to make the line. So there's a double click there. Now it's important to note whether they actually matched up. So you can see here that they're not quite even. So when I try to do my push-pull tool, I get this error where it doesn't work. So using our handy Control Z, I'll try that again. So I'm going to use my 2-point arc tool, click on the line, click tangent to edge, and then we'll try it again, click. And now that should have closed that little gap so that I can get rid of that area. Okay, so this time in the middle, I actually want to pull this out 5 millimeters. So now you can see that we have this nice little area that can fit inside and create our hinge. So spinning round, we'll do the same on the opposite side with our tape measure. We're going to bring out 5 and down 5. Oops. And create a circle of 3 millimeters on that face. Then using our push-pull tool, we can pull this one out 5 millimeters. Okay, so we can see that that's done a great job of creating this little area. So the last thing we're going to do is go back to our side view. We're going to highlight that whole area, right click it and choose Make Component. So this is our Hinge 2. So yeah, using our Transform tool, we're just going to take Hinge 2 and drag it along the x-axis until it's just inside that other component. Going to bring this back so I can see it. And closely. Oops. And our move tool. And you can see there that even with that precision selected with 4 decimals, seems to be kind of locking into place a little. There we go, so we can just make sure that this component is nicely centered inside the other component. Just double check it from the top here, so we don't want them touching at all. So now if we come back this way, we can there we go. So we can see now that there's nice gaps all the way around it. And this will now print. So we can now go up to their little file and choose Save As and save it as a name, or we can choose, we can choose to export it as an STL file ready for print.